Hi there. In this lecture we see Mikhail Tal against Janis Klavins in 1958, Riga. We see e4 for Mikhail Tal, c5, the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, and now here is the Richter-Rauzer system, bishop g5. We see e6, queen d2, a6, white castles queenside, bishop d7, f4, and now h6 is played. This leads to a very, very interesting early kind of combinational opportunity, it seems, that black indulges in here, and that is knight takes e4. It's a little bit on the optimistic side. So it is a kind of forcing move. It is hitting the queen and it is hitting the bishop. And it is the case that if white takes the queen, black takes on d2, and say bishop b6, knight takes f1 is possible, and black ends up not only being a pawn up, but very little to worry about here at all. This would be a total cold shower game. Black has a big advantage here. So what to do about knight takes e4? Well, two pieces are attacked, and with the next move, which I hope you can spot for 100 points, two pieces are kind of put out of harm's way, and actually it becomes a kind of gambit with this next move. So what do you think Tal played in this position? So it's worth knowing about to get the kind of nice attacking opportunities we really want, and to keep the tension going. It's queen e1. Yes, the queen actually protects h4 as well as safeguarding herself, and the upside of this is that it is a kind of gambit. We have a pinned pawn on the horizon now, the e6 pawn, so the power of the pinned piece or pawn is illusionary. The knight steps back, and yeah, I mean, if bishop e7, then that just drops a piece. Bishop takes e7, and then we take on e4. So the knight steps back. But now, yeah, we do have a pin. So was it worth a pawn? Well, the next move is very interesting. Knight f5. There is pressure now on d6. And because of that funny looking bishop d7's kind of waiting move earlier, yeah, d6 needs to be addressed, it seems. We see queen a5. If bishop c8, then actually white gets enormous pressure in this position with knight e4. If d5, with the king in the center, bishop takes f6, g takes. Can you see what in this variation white can do here, which is crushing, completely crushing for 100 points? Yeah? Okay, rook takes d5. Yeah, this is fantastic. If queen takes, then we play knight takes and win the queen. Knight takes f6. And if e takes, even better. Knight takes f6 is double check and mate. And let's have a look at this again. So if e5, yeah, we're just taking on d6, no problem. So yes, queen a5 was played, but Tal does here indeed, you know, take on d6. Yeah, this looks as though the whole thing's backfired for black. This looks a much better position for white. And in fact, after taking, black can't even castle here now. Black played knight e7. If black castles, then the punishment is bishop takes f6, rook takes d7. Thanks very much. So knight e7 is played. We have the rook going back now. Knight g6. And now another interesting move for Mikhail Tal. This is very, very funny stuff. Now that he's won that d6 pawn, it's almost as if, yeah, there are dark square weaknesses to exploit. White actually does have a dark square bishop without a counterpart, so this can be a formidable, you know, tactical weapon in theory. And in practice here, knight e4 is very, very dangerous now for black. We see queen takes e1, so not indulging in queen takes a2. That looks far too risky. So knight d6 check, though, is the point. And now bishop takes e1. So a fascinating position has been reached, where in fact this bishop is heading towards this diagonal. Very, very interesting stuff tactically going on here. So black tries knight d5. If knight takes f4, then the wrath of bishop b4 is evident here. White actually can play bishop c5 as an example. And this is a tricky position indeed. So for example, king f8, knight c4 check, knight b6 is winning material. The kind of, this situation is pretty unpleasant. So for example, knight takes winning material. But yeah, this looks like very, very unpleasant stuff. So here, okay, let's go back for a moment on knight takes f4, bishop b4, and just have a look at one or two other things. If b6 here, knight c8 check is double check, and then knight takes b6 is fair enough. So it is kind of tricky, this position. So we see knight d5, and here knight takes b7 is played. Black takes this pawn. If rook ab8 instead, then knight c5 and knight takes a6. The knight can actually return to b4 here. And for example, this is very pleasant for white with the bishop pair and the extra pawn. Okay, black can double, but we can just play c3 here with advantage. So knight taking the pawn was played. We see g3, knight g6, bishop g2. We see now rook hb8. And now, yeah, Mikhail Tal really comes into action here. Great, fantastic move here for 200 points. What would you play in this position? So even though the queens are off, there's still a huge amount of excitement here. We do have a bishop without a counterpart. Sometimes we need to fight for the benefits of that bishop on the dark square. So that's my clue to you. How can we fight for its benefits? Okay, rook takes d5, takes out the b4 control of black's position. That knight was guarding b4. We see bishop c6. If rook takes b7, then rook takes d7, and ouch, look at this. There's an unprotected rook on a8 to collect. If e takes d5, then bishop b4 check. Bishop takes d5 is very strong for white. This position, white's doing really well here in this position. Even though it's opposite coloured bishops. That knight on e7 is pretty precarious. And in fact, yeah, this is just a very, very good position for white overall. A pawn up, pretty solid. Okay, so black decides to play bishop c6, but now bishop b4 check, king e8. And here, it looks as though, hang on, this is really quite tricky. What has black done here? Well, Tal actually makes black's combination backfire here with a move for 50 points. What would you play? Okay, rook d8 check. Yeah, so to take on c6. And this is actually the end of the game. Black felt it was hopeless. If rook d7, then knight d6 check. And if king f8, we can just take on d7 and white is material up. If king e7, then just bishop takes a8. Again, white is absolutely winning. So yeah, a crushing final possession after bishop takes c6 check. So perhaps black should have actually gone in for just a smaller disadvantage rather than what was played, bishop c6. It's a bit flash in return. So e takes does seem to be the best option, this situation. Even though it's a little bit scary, this was the best option because technically black is just a pawn down. There's some work to do here. The e7 can be shielded with bishop e6. This was the best continuation, but black just accelerated their own demise here instead. Okay, so yeah, with that tricky bishop c6. So with bishop b4 check, the bishop is becoming the hero piece here, and the king dare not step to the f file. This means that rook f1. So this basically facilitated this other key check to win that bishop. A real backfire against the bishop on c6 and further picking up material. Okay, so yeah, the game ended on bishop takes c6. A rather complicated game, but it shows, you know, one of the lurking dangers of the Richter-Rauzer. You do need to know about the rebellion against the relative pin with knight takes e4. Sometimes it's good, takeaway points, sometimes it's good to see the options for rebelling against the relative pin, but here we're going into more advanced territory. We're kind of expecting a rebellious move and seeing the little upside of that, the e file, the pin pawn on e6, the implications then for knight f5 for knight takes d6. So this is pretty deep kind of downside of a downside. You know, you're expecting the opponent to try and exploit the downside, that this isn't an absolute pin, and you're seeing the downside of this downside exploitation, the punishment of a punishment, in fact. If you can see the punishment of a punishment, then you're becoming a great calculator of variations. You're expecting the opponent to try and punish you, but you're punishing the punishment. And this is a really cool thing to do in chess, to punish the punishment, especially with a deep kind of pawn sacrifice. But it's fundamentally, there's a breach of principle being exposed. The king was in the center here. So you should really expect a punishment of a punishment if your king's still in the center. As in the art of war, you know, the good fighter puts themselves beyond defeat before going on to the attack. In chess terms, if you don't try and develop pieces castle early and only then active operations, you should expect your active operations, which include potential punishments, to be punishable. You should expect a backfire because you have not fundamentally put yourself beyond defeat. So that's kind of what is being expressed here. The pin pawn is only a pin pawn because the king's still in the center. Because philosophically, even, forget principle, black hasn't put themselves beyond defeat. And picking up the dark square bishop gives white that huge asset, the dark square bishop without counterpart. It is in fine style that this bishop is kind of rotated around the board in fine style by e1 and potentially now to b4. So a further investment to give the bishop the opportunity to make use of the b4 square. So this asset picked up from the opening, and now this final backfire, you know, the unprotected piece is now a tactical backfire here. Again, a punishment of a punishment. That metaphor, the punishment of the punishment, is actually a kind of more advanced takeaway. But yeah, Tal is seeing further all the time against his opponent, who's trying to play these clever combinations, but they keep backfiring. Okay, so just bear some points in mind like that. I hope you found this game interesting and insightful. Thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay. Thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this, part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.